You're listening to the 40 Thrive Podcast, the show created for women 40 and beyond, ready to shake things up. And now, your host, Jackie McDougall.
Hi, and welcome back to another episode of 40 Thrive. It is our first of 2020. Happy New Year. If you are a brand new listener to the show, welcome. My name's Jackie McDougall. I'm a creative coach, a branding and marketing consultant, and community builder. What I am not is a life coach or someone who knows all the answers to the midlife problems. But I have to tell you, I've lived a lot of life and I have a tremendous amount of unique experiences that make me the go-to person for a lot of people. So if you're going through something in midlife and you want to get that collaboration and camaraderie and the support in a community, I may have been there and done that. And if I haven't, there is a good chance I'm connected to someone who has, or there's someone in our 40 Thrive community who completely understands. So I want to share some of the things you can expect in 2020 on 40 Thrive. Coming up very, very soon, we are launching Thriver of the Week. I'm really excited about that. This show will be much more community focused in 2020. I'll still be bringing you the experts and the resources and the brands that will help you thrive, but we'll also be featuring those everyday women who are doing extraordinary things in our community, who really are inspiring and motivating and just really kicking some butt. So look out for that. Also, you'll see very soon a second episode each week, this one called Thrive in 40. And what it includes is tips and tricks to help you thrive in 40 seconds or less. Super quick, easy, enjoyable episode each Monday morning to help you sort of kickstart the week and start thriving right away. My goal this year is to form a much deeper connection with my audience, with you, with the community through these episodes, but also through our free and online Facebook group. It is my privilege and honor to provide you these experts and resources and ways to thrive. And while we're talking about that, I invite you to head on over to 40thrive.com because I have created 10 tips to help you start thriving today. These are my personal ways to add gratitude and clarity to your life. Even if you incorporate just one of the 10 tips, I promise you, you will move much closer to thriving and not just surviving in midlife and beyond. So head on over to 40thrive.com and get your 10 tips to start thriving today. Okay, so let's get to today's episode. Many of you remember in December, we had our 10 days of giveaways. That was so super fun. But day 4 was a chance to win a co-host spot with me on 40 Thrive. And drum roll, please. I want to introduce you to today's co-host. Bonnie Frank is a former teacher and college professor. She's now an entrepreneur. She started her online coaching and consulting business from scratch at the age of 49. So she's the perfect person to feature as we kick off a more community-focused 40 Thrive for 2020. You can also catch Bonnie on her own podcast, Business Fabulous. But let's get to it. My guest co-host for the day, Bonnie Frank. Bonnie Frank, welcome to 40 Thrive.
Woohoo! Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
I'm so excited you're here. I think the first time we met was at She Podcast just a few months ago.
Yes, exactly.
And then you joined the group, and then you were part of our 10 days of giveaways and entering to win all those fun prizes, and you won day 4. So I'm excited. You're my co-host. First, I want to talk about you. So you were a teacher and a college professor.
Yes.
What were you teaching?
In 5th grade, I taught everything. In 5th, 6th, 7th, I specialized in math. And at the university, I've taught in 2 different departments. So one was the education department. For 3 years, I taught math and science methods. So I taught teachers how to teach better and creatively. And then for 3 years, I taught in the business college and I taught a live video marketing.
Oh, cool. So how do you move from doing your thing, and especially going from one to the other? That's a big leap, even though they're both teaching, to go from elementary, junior high, area to college is one leap, but then you become an entrepreneur who is an expert in online marketing. How does that happen?
So, the leap in terms of education in there, when I was teaching fifth grade, I taught at a school that was a multiple intelligences school. It was the second in the country. And every single day, this is not an exaggeration, every day I had teachers, administrators, all sorts of people from all over the world in my classroom watching me teach every day for 8 years.
Wow. So what does that mean, that your school was like a teaching school?
Well, it was a very, very progressive school. It was based around the multiple intelligences, which Howard Gardner, he's a Harvard University professor and psychologist, and he created a theory in 1988 that we each have multiple intelligences. In other words, ways of making sense of the world, very different ways of making sense in the world. So the SATs are logical, mathematical, and linguistic. Those are your SATs, your math and your English. But there are many other ways to make sense of the world. And he's now come up with more than 10 intelligences. At the time, it was seven, and everything we taught was geared around the seven intelligences. So it didn't matter what I taught, I was teaching them in a multitude of ways. And I was also at the same time traveling around the country teaching other teachers and administrators how to teach at various conferences. And so doing essentially the same thing for a semester course was a lateral move for me.
I want to touch upon this for a little bit, because how many of us, many of the 40 Thrive listeners have children or grown children, but how many of us have either ourselves or raised kids who just don't learn in the way that typical public schools are set up for kids to learn? So this is kind of amazing. I didn't even know that this was happening, that teachers are being trained to present information in a different way based on how somebody might learn.
Our public school systems, even as good as some are, were created for the Industrial Revolution. That was a long time ago. Our public school system is still set up for people to go work in factories. And that really wasn't something that I was interested in my students doing. And it wasn't something, I mean, if they wanted to do that, that was fine. But I wanted to be able to train their minds for lots of opportunities in their future, and my own children as well. So when my kids were babies, their toys were divided into the multiple intelligences.
Really? How do you do that?
Very meticulously. I was a new mom. You want to do the best of everything.
Can you give
I
me an
don't know.
example of how that would look, though?
Well, sure. I mean, I wanted to make sure that they had spatial things and artistic. So spatial artistic is one intelligence. So spatial would be things like Legos and an erector set and Tonka trucks, where you are utilizing the space around you.
Mhm.
But the spatial artistic also utilizes the artistic intelligence. So I always made sure from the time that they came out that they had lots of tactile experiences, and I had them utilizing art supplies well beyond their years. And I taught them to use scissors, very early on, and use a lot of different artistic tools. So those are some examples.
I know that more and more women have been diagnosed with either ADHD as they're older, or maybe they just don't feel like they fit the mold. Like they'd like to start a new career, they'd like to learn something new, but they don't necessarily learn in that traditional way that we were taught growing up. So, what would you say to someone who's listening who really wants to either go back to school or learn a new skill? Have things changed that they're actually open to maybe the different types of learning? Or would you have tips for somebody who might want to continue their education?
I would say absolutely do it. I don't care how old you are. I don't care your circumstances. I don't care how much money you have. There are always ways to learn whatever you want to learn. When I decided to quit teaching, I didn't quote unquote retire. I had no retirement. I'd been working in private school. There was no retirement. So when I quit teaching, I opened up my business coaching and consulting agency the very next day. I had to teach myself everything about business. I'm completely self-taught with business. My degrees happen to be in education. So I'm able to explain things easily and to create any sort of courses and programs and things like that very easily. But everything about business was self-taught. I've never had a business class. And I don't tend to think a lot of business professors because most of them have never run a business.
Isn't that fascinating? And even working in the online space, you see a lot of people who are teaching something that they've never done. For somebody to teach you how to do A, B, and C, and the first time they're doing A, B, and C is teaching you, you may want to find somebody else.
Unless it's a beta situation and it's free,
Yeah.
I
Or
I
low
would
cost.
agree.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
there are, it doesn't mean don't go and teach that. It's just,
hmm
I think experience makes such a huge difference. I was at a New Year's party yesterday and I was talking to someone I worked in TV with in the 90s. I hadn't seen him in a very, very long time. And we were talking, he had his girlfriend there and she's doing some really creative, amazing work in her 50s. And we were talking about how we stop appreciating and respecting experience. It doesn't necessarily mean experience doing that exact thing that they want to be doing, but if you are following somebody, if somebody's teaching you business and they've never had a business or they've never been educated about business, you may want to try someone else first because and let them have that experience. But it doesn't take 50 years of experience for us to then be able to turn around. So it's sort of a two-sided there in that you want to find somebody to learn from who understands the pitfalls and the challenges, but you also don't need, I see women all the time like, I can't do A, B, and C because I don't have a degree in this. I don't have, all this work experience. It doesn't take that long to build that experience.
Correct. And when I started my coaching and consulting business, I was 49. That's not the optimal time necessarily. It's not the time that of life that people tend to think about. Oh, this is the perfect time to start a new business. But I just did it, and everyone, and I do mean everyone, told me I couldn't do it. Everyone,
Really?
family, friends, yes, everyone. Because I was a teacher. They had only seen me as a teacher. And they said, Bonnie, you don't know anything about business. I said, yes, I do. And they said, no, you don't. You've never run a business. I said, well, that's true, but that doesn't mean I don't know anything about business. And the less they encouraged me, the more that fueled me to succeed.
I love that. But at the same time, there are a lot of, or I should say, and at the same time, there are a lot of women out there who would rather or who don't know how to get out of their own way and only listen to the voices of other people telling them that they can't do that. So, what do you think it was inside you that was fueled by that instead of stopped by that?
A couple of things. I'm the baby of 5. So
Mm.
if you know anything about what those people are like, I am one of them.
I'm the 11th of 13, so I got you.
Oh, there you go.
Because
Exactly.
I'm also fueled by what you're fueled by. So that's why I want to
Yeah.
talk about this.
Yeah. Same thing.
Yeah.
Same thing. I was hell bent and determined. I was absolutely determined to make it work. And I had, I have 2 sons, and I wanted them to see their mom succeed. I did not want them to see their mom crushed under the constant discouragement from their dad. And I didn't want them to see a woman as weak.
Mm.
It was really, really important to me. And I would have felt the same if they were, my daughters, of course, but almost even more so because they were boys, because I was the only woman they were seeing. They didn't have sisters. And my mom was not really around very much as a grandma, and I don't have a big family, and so there weren't sisters or aunts or cousins, none of that. And so their female role models were less than they were fewer than other people. And I wanted, if nothing else, I wanted this one to be the strong one. And so I just kept going. About every 2 weeks, it was almost like clockwork, really. About every 2 weeks, my husband at the time, we're now divorced. Life is great. At the time, he would come up to my desk. All I had was a desk in the living room. I didn't have an office, and I didn't even have a desk when I started, to be honest with you. Actually started my business in coffee shops. And so he would come up to my desk in the living room with yet another idea of something else that I should be doing that, of course, was going to be a moneymaker, because what I was doing was not making money. Well, at first he was right. I wasn't making any money for the first 14 months. I tried really, really hard. I was working 7 days a week, 8 to 12 hours a day, and still raising my kids and taking care of him at the time as well, because he was not well. And I could not get a paid client for the first 14 months. So at first he was right. I wasn't making any money. But then I was making money, and he was trying to convince me that I simply wasn't, and I should quit, whatever nonsense this was that I was doing. And I would just smile occasionally and nod, and then he would leave, and then I would go back to my business.
What was it that, even about him, because a lot of people, especially married, would go, okay, maybe he's right, or you would just let that bring you down, but you just stayed the course. I mean, I just picture you hearing all this squawking on either side of you and just like having tunnel vision and just continuing on. Was it something like that?
Yes. And occasionally I am sort of like a bull in a china shop with how I go about things. So yes, ultimately it was like that. But did I get depressed? Absolutely. Did I think about quitting? Almost daily. Absolutely. Yeah. And so has every successful entrepreneur out there. The difference between success and failure is not giving up. Because if you give up, you're definitely, you have already failed. But if you don't give up, at least you got a shot.
I think support is everything. Mentorship, coaching, friendship, relationship. Doesn't matter though, because I think sometimes we're looking for support in the wrong places where we will never find it. And it's like beating your head against a wall. And so if you're listening right now and you're thinking, yes, that's me, I'm trying to do something and I'm not getting support, find it somewhere else. Find it in your community with maybe a networking group, your church, your neighbors, a mall walking group, whatever it is. Like, there is support out there. I think sometimes it's easy to get stuck when we expect it to be in a specific place.
Right. And, the online space is a wonderful and horrible place every day, all day long.
Yes.
And so it just depends on the mindset that you have when you're there. And it doesn't matter what platform you're on. It doesn't matter what you're doing, what content you're consuming. It doesn't matter who you're looking at. It doesn't matter. It's going to be wonderful and or horrible at the exact same second, depending on your mindset. And people forget that every single person they're watching, and I have studied, not just watched, not just consumed content, but literally studied people for years. I have online tours as well. Some I've met in person, some I may never meet, but I have studied them. And every single one of them all started at some point. They didn't start where they are now. They are where they are now. That's not where they started. So 20 years ago, Gary Vaynerchuk was selling liquor from his parents' liquor store.
Yep.
He wasn't Gary V. There was no Gary V. He wasn't VaynerMedia. He didn't have a team of people. He wasn't on stages worldwide. None of that was happening. He was working for his parents.
Right. Some of my audience I know would know who Gary V is, but like, take Brene Brown. I mean, she wasn't even a blip in this whole world of personal development and all of that, Nobody
Neither
knew
was
who
Rachel Hollis 20 years ago.
Yeah.
Think about it. What is she, 21? No, she's not.
Like, she was in high school, probably.
I'm kidding. She is in her 30s somewhere, but right. Yes, correct. Yeah. And even 10 years ago, her business looked very, very different. Things take time.
But we do this also with people around us, not just in the online space. Like, oh, look at her. she's got this going on. And it's like, we're not seeing the 8 to 10 to 12, 15 years of blood, sweat, and tears and no clients, or going through school and raising kids as a single mom. So you're absolutely right. We need to make sure that when we do start something, that we understand and respect that we are at the beginning and not compare ourselves with somebody else's middle, as they say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Everybody starts. Most people don't finish, and 1% to 2% will succeed.
Because they don't give up. I hear that compared sometimes to when a baby first starts to learn how to walk, and a baby will take a step or 2 steps and fall down. You don't see them go like, "Oh, I can't do this.
I'm done. I'll never learn to walk.
Look at those people running." Like,
if only I could be like them. If only my legs could one day be that long, then I can go to the Olympics.
Exactly. They just say, "Oh, I don't even know that they think about it. They just get up again." And that's really so important. So let's talk about goals. So when you first started this business, did you have specific goals, or were you just kind of like throwing stuff against the wall and hoping that something would stick?
Well, I wasn't throwing things against the wall, but I had to try a whole bunch of different things.
Right.
Because I was teaching myself everything at the same time. So when I started, I didn't even know that there was a thing called an ideal client avatar. So not only did I not have one, I didn't know that one existed. I didn't know what it was. And right around the 12-month mark, I thought I had carved mine out well enough, but I was still bringing clients to me. I was still attracting people that I didn't want to attract. So I went back to the drawing board again, carved it out more, and 2 months later, I started bringing in paid clients. So I started out, I had learned social media by being an influencer for brands, otherwise known as a mommy blogger.
Okay.
So brands paid me, if what's in your house, that brand probably paid me to write a blog or post on social media or make a video. The word vlog was not invented then.
Right.
About their brand. And so I had done that for a couple of years, and that's how I taught myself social media. And I did really well at that. But right around the 1.5 year mark, I started thinking, I'm making these big names money and I'm building up their brand, but nobody knows about me. I'm simply just the conduit.
Exactly.
To their bank account is essentially it was great for them and it was okay for me, but I was not building up my own brand. And so after a couple of years, that's when I decided to build up my own brand. And it was only a little bit easier because I did understand social media and I already had a following. Unfortunately, none of those people went with me. So I had to build up my following from scratch. None of the mommy bloggers were interested in building a business online, which is fascinating to me.
Why do you think that was? Because I was in the same space. I'm telling you, I think we're living the same life, like across the country from each other. I have 3 boys. I have a big family. I was in that mommy blogging space many years ago. And so why do you think that they didn't sort of follow?
A couple of different reasons. One, the biggest overarching reason is complacency. A lot of women go into mommy blogging because it's a creativity outlet and they get free stuff.
Right.
And a lot of them just stop right there. They're perfectly happy with free makeup or free diapers or a gift card to a bookstore or who knows what, an Amazon gift card.
Invitations to events and things like that.
Correct.
So you've got somebody who might be a stay-at-home mom who is doing this on the side and then giving her kids like some of these extras because of this work, and she's satisfied with that.
Correct. And in my mind, that's a wonderful step, but I was not satisfied with that being the end. I was like, oh no, this is insanity because the ceiling is already completely cemented in terms of how much I can earn because it's not determined by me. It's determined by the brands. Or if you go through a third party, it's determined by them and the brands. So the ceiling was already set before I had come into the picture. And so it's not that it was a glass ceiling. And in my mind, it was a cement ceiling. It was a titanium ceiling. I couldn't surpass that. So I had to go out on my own and create my own brand. And so I think complacency, to answer your question, is one of the reasons. And I think the other reason is fear. And we do get in our own way. Now, everybody gets in their own way. It doesn't matter if they're male, female, how old they are, where they grew up in the world, whatever their current circumstances are, it doesn't matter. Everybody gets in their own way. However, in my experience, I think women have a harder go, which is why 95% of my clients are women.
And in what way do you see your clients getting in their own way?
They immediately say no before they even think about possibilities.
Can you say that again? I think that's really, really important.
They immediately say no before they even think about possibilities.
Yes. Yes. I see it all the time. And do you think that was also what was happening with the mommy bloggers?
Oh, absolutely. Because they understood the workflow, the current workflow. They understood how to get the free stuff that they were getting. And if they just kept doing the same thing over and over and over again with different pictures and different words and different hashtags, they would keep getting those free products. But in order to do what I was setting out to do, they couldn't do the same old, same old. Because doing the same thing over and over is only going to yield the same result. And it's scary to change. It's terrifying.
But at this point, and I know at this point, given my career and my background, that nothing stays the same forever. And so if you're a blogger or you work in television like I do and did, or you just have you're in another creative field, if you do not innovate, you die. And so innovation is one of the number one thing that I believe, and you probably do the same thing. I could meet somebody, we sit down for coffee, I find out their experience, I find out what they're really passionate about, and I'm like, shift it this way. And it's a brand new opportunity that they're absolutely excited about. But we all get stuck in thinking, well, I have to do it the same way, the same way, the same way. And yet I'm not getting the results that I used to get 10 years ago. And they're so frustrated. There was a time when I was blogging and I walked out into my driveway and I looked at the sky and it was clear blue California day. And then I turned around and behind me was this big gray, cloudy, ready for a storm day. And I was in the exact same spot. And I took a picture one way and I took a picture another way.
There's a metaphor for you.
Right? And I said, you could be in the exact same spot. You just need to look in a different direction. And I can't say enough. And so I see you online. I see you doing your business. And you've nailed that, to be able to look in a different direction and see things in a new way. It doesn't require starting from scratch.
Correct. And every single person on the planet has talents and abilities that can be monetized.
Yes.
Everybody. But as human beings, we are human and we are fallible. And we think that, I think women in particular have the tendency to think that they're not worthy. Number one, not to go back to Saturday Night Live 1980, but
but it's true.
I do have a tendency to, I think that women have a tendency to think that. So they think they're not worthy. And also the types of, our skills, our abilities, our knowledge, we walk around with that all day long, every day. So we don't think it's a big deal because we've been doing that for years. Or,
right.
Calligraphy. Oh, that's no big deal. It's so easy. No, it's not. I've tried it a lot. I am absolutely incapable. No. That is a skill that should cost a lot of money because it is not easy. Those of you calligraphers out there, listen up. Yes, raise your prices. Every one of you. You deserve it. We don't think that it's a big deal what we know because we know it.
Yes.
And what we don't realize is everybody else doesn't know it. Right. They all know different things. Everybody is an expert in at least one thing and probably more than one thing. But for sure, in at least one thing.
Right.
So why not make money with that one thing?
And you don't have to overcomplicate it. So when I first started teaching podcasting, I was like, my lessons were jam packed to the point where people were like, I can't, this is too much. Like, I can't do this. And I realized that they want to learn how to start. They don't need to learn everything that I've learned over the past 10 years, And so it was really important for me to go back and simplify it. And so let's just say someone listening is really great at baking cakes. And you could either bake cakes and sell them, or you could even like we do, like create an online course where you teach people how to bake cakes. Now, coming from me, I don't, I'm not big on measuring and things like that. So I like to cook over bake where I can get away with that. But if I were looking to learn how to bake, I certainly would not want somebody to teach me all this overly complicated stuff. I would
No,
want step one. And so
correct.
I think it's really important for people, exactly what you're saying, to understand there's an audience for the basics, even
There's an audience
calligraphy.
for everything.
Yeah, calligraphy. Start at the basics. You don't have to start with all the extra special. I don't even know how to speak calligraphy language, but
Right. No,
but
you
start
don't ever
simple.
have to buy a fountain pen. There's
Yeah.
lots of different ways that you can do it. And to go back to baking, and that's a great example, all baking is chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. And I bake with a recipe ish.
Ish.
I might add a whole bunch more, maybe things like sugar, for example, or add ingredients that people never thought of for that particular recipe. So, but yes, baking in particular, you do have to have the same ratio of, baking powder to whatever it is.
Right.
So, in order for the chemistry to work out, in order for it to be the consistency that you want it to be, that's true. But it's the same thing. It's exactly the same in business. For me, everything is a business lesson, everything.
Yep.
And that's how I started my business. I started with Periscope I live in St. Louis, Missouri, in St. Louis coffee shops. And it ended up to be a great thing because I kept holding up my coffee cup and talking about how great the coffee shop was. So then I kept getting free coffee, I was like, this is amazing.
It's a great way to start.
All I need is coffee and Wi-Fi and I can make money. And look, they're already giving me both. This is
Right.
great.
So just for those who are listening who don't understand Periscope, because my audience is not necessarily like online business owners or marketers or anything like that. And so it's important to sort of fill them in. So Periscope is a live streaming app that's
Correct.
connected to Twitter.
Correct. Twitter bought out Periscope in March of 2015. And they bought out Periscope in about 3 weeks after Periscope launched. And shortly thereafter, I read an article about two companies at the time that were live streaming. One was Periscope, and Periscope was owned by Twitter. I immediately opened up my Periscope account, immediately, and I started live streaming. And that was on July 3rd, 2015.
Wow. Do you know the exact date? It's amazing. I was a co-host of a podcast called Broadcast with Kim Goldman, and we used Periscope. She used to like go crazy every time I tried to add things to our podcast. She's like, can we just record our audio? Like, why do we have to do all this extra stuff? But I love live streaming. You and I were talking a little bit offline about it because you can just show up as you are and be yourself and not worry about editing and sounding perfect and all of that good stuff. So live streaming is great. And so I love that you're willing to try new things in this new business, but also at the same time have a plan in place and work that out. So in the group, in the 40 Thrive community on Facebook, I asked some of the women, if they could create one big, bold goal for 2020, what would it be? And I noticed a lot of general response. So lose weight or work out more or just stuff that really can't be necessarily measured. And I thought, you know what? I really want to talk about this in the first episode of 2020 because I'm all about the SMART goal. I know I did not create it, but I live by it in almost everything I do.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wanted to share a little bit. Is that something, a SMART goal? Do you live by that as well?
I do. And so does everyone else who's successful, whether or
Right.
not they call it a SMART goal or not, whether they
Right.
use that acronym or they don't, or they call it something else. they still go through all the steps.
Right. For me, for example, my husband and I downloaded the Couch to 5K app. And so they give you 3 running workouts a week for 9 weeks. And then you should be able to run a 5K. Like, and they train you. So like we've done 2 days already where it has some, brisk walking and then regular walking and jogging. Have you done it before?
No.
No. Okay. So it's like completely doable at our fitness level and our running experience right now. And then week 2, it gets a little bit more challenging. You build upon that. And so I've created, my birthday is almost 90 days from, it's just a little over 90 days from January 1st. My birthday is April 2nd. I love to create a goal, a 90-day goal, and then maybe one after that, which would be around July 1st. So like, it's very easy quarterly, to do that. So our goal for my birthday is to be able to run that 5K. The 3 months after that, I want to do a Spartan race where you add all of the events in between all the running, and building on the strength and all that. But I don't think it's a great goal to have if you can't run a 5K, if you're going to be running, because I want to build upon that. And so I am such a firm believer of the SMART goals. And for those of you who don't know, it's specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-based. It's really that simple, that instead of saying, oh, I want to lose some weight this year, I'm all about, instead of a number on the scale, I would rather make these physical goals that I know I'm like working toward and I can actually feel myself getting stronger than to worry about the scale telling me if I'm successful. Let's work together in helping my audience create a goal for themselves, whether it's physical, business goal, maybe an income goal. How would you tell them to use these specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, time-based goals to get there?
Well, the first thing is, if they're starting a business, they have to have something that people want, not need. Business is not about need. It's all about wants, because that's how people buy. They buy things because they want them. Just look in any woman's closet, and I hate to stereotype, but I am one of these people, and look at the number of shoes we have. Look at the number of black pants we have.
Right.
Nobody shops out of need. Nobody. And people will tell me all the time, oh no, Bonnie, that's not true. I needed a winter coat. Really? Because you have nothing to keep you warm. You have absolutely nothing. Well, no, I do. Okay, well then you didn't need it. You wanted it.
Right.
And ultimately, you're choosing among 3, or you're choosing between 2 items, and it always comes down to the one you want. Always.
Right.
It doesn't matter what the thing is that you're buying. So you have to have something that people want in order to have a business. That's what a lemonade stand is. That's why it works in the summer as opposed to the winter.
Right.
So now you have, your widget, your product business, your product or your program or your service, whatever it is that people want. And then you need to know who your people are, because you have to know how to sell it to them. You know they want it, but they need to know how incredible it is, all the things that it will do to enhance their life. Don't tell them how many levers and pulleys it has, because nobody cares except people who buy Swiss Army knives. Nobody cares, but you need to tell them how it's going to change their life, the experience that they're going to get from it. So for example, like for a monetary goal, if you want to make a monetary goal for your business, you can make a monetary goal for your business. Or you could say, I want to make enough money to take my family on an all expenses trip to X, because you know how much money that's going to cost, right? Whatever type of, if you're talking about a resort or if you're talking about a cruise or whatever it is, generally about how much money that's going to cost. But now you've got emotion tied into it. Now you've got the experience, because people purchase from emotion. That's why they want it, because they're emotional about it.
Right.
And so that's, and all of that might seem like, well, seriously, Bonnie, like, I just want to, what am I supposed to do first? Well, if you don't have that kind of stuff, it doesn't matter what I tell you to do next. It doesn't matter. Doesn't matter where you are on social media. Doesn't matter what kind of website you have. It doesn't matter if you podcast or not. None of that will matter. If you don't have things that people want,
Mm-hmm.
and if you don't know who they are, who want it, and if you can't communicate it to them, nothing
Right.
else will matter.
And you make a good point, because this isn't just in business. I see it with podcasting all the time. And just because we have a passion and want to talk about something, if you expect somebody to listen, they need to want it. And so if you have an idea that you think is absolutely brilliant and nobody wants it, guess what? You're podcasting into a closet. I know podcasting specifically is a tough sell sometimes to women over 40, because we've lived our lives without it, and pretty full lives without it. And that we don't necessarily, if you haven't listened to a podcast, you may not see the benefits of what it will bring to your life. And so it's a harder sell to get somebody to download a podcast app or open up a podcast app that already comes on their phone and
Yes.
press play. And that's why it's all about providing them. Like, I don't care if you listen to my podcast for a second. If I can help you find a podcast that helps your life, I've won. And you're a woman over 40, because I think it's really important just to advocate for podcasting in general, to help these women benefit their lives in all sorts of ways. And so I'm all about, like, I tell people at parties, open up your phone right now. I'll help you find something. Like, what are you into? What do you want to learn about? What's an author, who's an author you like? What's a topic you like? And I'll help you find one episode, not like subscribe to the show and then listen to it forever, but one episode to give you a taste of what your life can be like when you start to listen to podcasts. So I like that you're teaching, if you're going to start a business, it needs to be something that people want.
Mm-hmm. And I started listening to podcasts 6 years ago. I've known for 6 years that I wanted to start a podcast, but I didn't start one for 5.5 years. And so 6 years ago, I started listening to podcasts with the idea that I might want to start a business. And so the first two podcasts I listened to, one was Michael O'Neill, the Solopreneur Hour,
Mm-hmm.
and the other one was Denise Duffield Thomas's, because she talks about money blocks.
Yes.
And I knew enough to know those would be good places to start. And I would listen to them on walks. And I would walk for an hour, an hour and a half, whatever it was. And, if it's a 30-minute show, then you could listen to 3 episodes in that walk, or 2 episodes in that walk, whatever. So that's how I started. And so for me, I was saying right away, wow, this is doable. I really can open this business that I'm thinking about in my head. And I didn't even know what business it would be at that point. But
Right.
I'm like, this is doable. People are doing this. This guy is telling me I can do this. And he's telling me all the different steps I have to follow. And then if I listen to this woman, I'll get out of my own head about the craziness of my money blocks, and I can actually start making money. That's how I started listening to podcasts.
That's fantastic. There is so much free content out there to help you learn whatever it is that you want to learn. It's so
Yeah.
good.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it doesn't mean that you might never have to invest. People say invest in yourself, invest in your business, however you want to phrase it. It doesn't necessarily mean that you'll never have to spend money learning whatever it is that you want to learn. But when I started my business, I started from scratch. I had zero money to invest in my business, none. Every penny I'd made was already earmarked for the kids.
Right.
Was already in the family bucket. And so I started from scratch with no money. I didn't even have a desk at home. And so I absorbed as much free content as I possibly could. And then I made money. I had to make money first before I could buy anything.
Right. It's so easy to hear all these different people who are like, invest in yourself and go into debt and take out this credit card and do all those things. But if you have this skill, and we're talking about anyone out there who may have a skill, and you're willing to just work hard, at some point you will invest in some way. But in the beginning, it's mostly time and energy and effort.
Right. And Yeah, you can go into debt if you want to, but that's not something I'm a business coach. Why in the world would I suggest that to somebody? So I'm never going to suggest that. And, people will say to me, oh, well, I only have this much on my credit card. Okay. First of all, that's TMI because you don't need to tell me anything like that.
Hmm.
And also, then don't buy it. If you can't afford it, don't buy it because there's always another way. So there are faster routes and there are slower routes that may cost less or no money at all. There's always another way, no matter where you are. And you have to make a choice. And the people, I feel very compelled to put this in there that anyone who's saying you have to invest in yourself, otherwise you're not serious about your business, you have to quit your job. People, oh my God, I can't even tell you how many people said this to me. Oh, you have to just put everything in. You have to get out a loan from a bank. You have to do this. You have to do that. I had someone say, Bonnie, you'll never succeed without my coaching. The whole reason I became a coach was because I tried to find a coach for myself and I interviewed 25 different ones. I had them coach me because coaches will give out free coaching every once in a while. And so I had 25 hours of free coaching and I hated all of them.
Really?
They were all horrible. They were so fluffy and so vague and so into how great they were. And they really, really rubbed me the wrong way. And so I thought, okay, I can't make you all stop. I really wish I could, but I can't. But at least I can provide an alternative. So
Right.
that's why I became a coach.
Well, and let's call it out though, that often when somebody is offering you a free hour or 45 minutes or whatever, they're really just on the phone to sell you a bigger program. I don't work that way. I feel like I'll give you my free time. And if that's what you get for free, imagine what you get when you continue on. I just know that my coaching sells itself. That sounds so like cocky, but it's just true because I believe in my students. But also, I have discovered over the past couple of years that if I need to convince you, we probably shouldn't work together anyway, because I am not for everyone. And I tell my students, I mean, this is actually one of the main things I live my life by, is that I'm not for everyone. And so I'm not going to try to change myself to trick you into thinking I'm for you when we start to work together and we're both going to be miserable.
Correct. Somebody's not going to be happy. That's for sure.
I'm a Boston broad with 12 siblings. Like, I am not going to sugarcoat. I'm going to call you. One of my students have mentioned this before, said I call people forward. At first she said call you out, but then she said, no, it's actually call you forward, because I see, and it sounds like you do too, I see in people sometimes the thing that they can't see themselves.
Yes.
And I'm willing to call you out on it and to let you know it's there. It's always meant with love, but I have a strong personality. And so I'm not going to, I don't sugarcoat it.
Correct. That's exactly how I am. 100%. Maybe we are like sisters from a different mother.
I think so.
Yeah. Because that's exactly how I am. And, it's interesting because I'll meet somebody or I'll talk to somebody and they'll ask me about coaching and whatever different things. And then it usually, whether it's on the phone or in person, I can just feel it. So, I feel it over the phone. I know exactly how their face looks, or I see it, across the Starbucks table or whatever. And they're waiting for the sales pitch. And so I just kind of in my head, I'm laughing by this point, and I just sit there. And then they're like, well, I go, oh, are you waiting for the pitch? Because of course they are. And they go, well, yeah. I go, I've already done it. I'm like, well, what do you mean? I said, well, you asked me the questions. I answered the questions. You either hire me or you don't. That's okay.
Right.
That's
and
it.
that's exactly right. Because I had a client of mine who I adore her, but I wasn't coaching clients one-on-one in the way that she needed. And so I gave her a couple of sessions. Like, she was a friend of a friend. And so I was like, yeah, I'll help you out. No big deal. And so I helped her out. And then she literally had to say, well, will you coach me or not? Because I didn't, and this is a bigger lesson, but I didn't I didn't see myself coaching her because that's not what my life looked like. And then ultimately I was like, oh yeah, okay. Yeah, let me send over a proposal. Like, we have to sort of be open to different opportunities and how they fall into our lap, and, be open to the universe who's like, tap, 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 I want to give you this, Jackie. I want to give you this, Bonnie. Like, here's an opportunity. And then we kind of get so closed off that we're like, that doesn't look the way I have it all mapped in my calendar behind me, and so it can't possibly be the right thing. I'm kind of obsessed with two things, and one of them is mapping things out and like working on these SMART goals and being really specific, and then also being open to what is out there that I haven't even discovered yet, because we're all so focused. We can only make plans or wish or dream or make goals for things that we have seen before. If you have never seen something in your life, you don't know what's out there. And so I think it's really important to have all the plans and have all the maps, but also just be open-minded to what the universe will provide.
Right. And I am not, I don't really dabble in a lot of woo.
I'm one woo of the woo woo.
You're one.
Yeah.
I'm like maybe an eighth.
I told my husband I'm committing more to the woo woo this year because it's in me and I just need to like be secure enough to let it out.
Right. Like, it's great to say the universe will provide, but the universe is not going to pay your electricity bill. The universe doesn't care, neither do your next door neighbors. So it's on you to make sure that as much as the universe is going to hand you everything and you're manifesting and you're burning the sage and you're doing whatever, you have to be realistic and you have to pay the bills. So that's the flip side of that.
But when I say the universe provides, I don't mean like I've seen that too, where someone's like, there's a foreclosure sign on the house and they're like, the universe will provide. Please don't mistake what I'm saying. I'm saying make all the plans, but be open to the opportunities that you have not expected or that you didn't even know existed, because how could you? I mean, it's also in the language where the universe, some might say God, some might say like just chance, it's all in what you believe. But there's so much more out there for you if you don't get so structured and regimented and able to just open and allow yourself to receive.
Correct. And David Meltzer, who's one of my online mentors, and he and I sat in a hotel lobby not long ago and chatted for an hour, just me and him, just chatting. If you are familiar with the Jerry Maguire movie, that's basically who he is.
Okay.
And it literally was created around his firm. And he always says that lessons will continue to present themselves until we learn them.
Right.
So that lesson's going to be right in front of our face over and over and over again until we learn it. And once we learn it, then that lesson goes away and now other lessons appear. And another way of thinking about that is that nobody is lucky. Everybody creates their own luck. And people love to say, oh, well, she was just lucky because she was in the right place at the right time. Okay. I bet that there's a lot more to it than that. There's a reason that she was right there, right then. Or she had done her research and she knew exactly right around the area that creative agency director would be right around the time they would be there. And she made sure that she was there, even if she had to wait 4.5 hours to make sure. So luck doesn't necessarily play into it. I feel very strongly that people make their own luck, and everybody can be just that lucky. Everybody can. And there's opportunities around you all the time, all day long, and lessons all the time, all day long. But like you said, Jackie, like you've got to be open to them. You've got to keep your eyes open. You've got to keep your ears open. You've got to be in the right headspace to, you could say, to receive the messages or just to see what's right in front of your face. That's the way I think about it.
Right.
It is right there, Bonnie. Grab it.
Right.
But if you're not in the right frame of mind, it can be right there and you don't even know.
100%. And I use this example happened years ago with my kids. and we were talking about something, and I said, well, let's play a game. I'm going to drive 3 blocks and I want you to tell me how many white cars you see. And they all counted the white cars. They were little. They were probably all under 8. And they're like counting the cars, and we get to the end of the block and I said, well, how many red cars did you see? And they said, what? You asked us to count white cars. And I said, right. So you were looking for white cars and you saw how many? This many. How many red cars you see? Well, we don't know because we weren't looking. I said, that's exactly right. When you are looking for opportunities, when you are open to the good in the world, when you're open to, and everything that's possible, then you will see it. But when you close yourself off, then you're never going to see it. And so I think, you ever notice that all the luck happens to the people who are prepared?
Right. Exactly. Boy, is LeBron James one lucky guy.
Right?
Yeah. Stephen Curry, he's so lucky.
So lucky.
Right.
So lucky.
Yeah. Go back and study their backstory, people.
Yeah. And even go back to Brene Brown, right? She talks about in her special that she was going to go up on stage and talk about another research thing. And then she decided to change it. And she decided to take a risk. And that risk, could it have just blown up in her face? Sure. But if we're not willing to show up and take risks, then we will never get to that next level of like, whoa, this is my life.
Exactly. And Carol Dweck talks about this in her book, Mindset. There's 2 different types of mindset. So one is a growth mindset and one is a fixed mindset. And the fixed mindset is where you've got the blinders on and you never see the other opportunities out there. And a growth mindset is what we're all born with. And when you were talking about a baby learning to walk, a baby comes out with a growth mindset. And unfortunately, it's all of the lessons that are in front of us, and whether it's negativity or positivity, that we allow in and to, take camp in our brains. That's what can make us not get up when we fall. And
Right.
Anyone who you see who is successful at anything, it doesn't matter what it is. It doesn't matter who they are. It doesn't matter where they are in the world. Anybody who is successful has gotten up more than once. In fact, many, many, many times. But you just don't know it because you see the success. But if you go back and you study those people, that's why I say, when I said before, I've studied a lot of people online. When you go back and you study those people, you start to see that Lady Gaga had her dad carrying her keyboard for her up 3 flights of steps to get to that hovel of a place so that she could play. What you see now is her selling out stadiums. Right. What you see now is her on magazines and newspapers and all the interviews and all the things. But if you go back and you study, she didn't start out that way.
I could talk to you all day, Bonnie. I've really enjoyed having a co-host. It's been so much fun. 40 Thrive this year is tweaking things a little bit and expanding, I should say, because we're going to be doing things like Thriver of the Week, where I'll be featuring someone from the community, and also a new second episode each week called Thrive in 40. It's a Monday morning episode that features expert advice to help you thrive in 40 seconds or less.
Oh, cool. That's great.
The second one. So I'm really excited to be including the community more in the episodes in 2020. That's why it was created, was to give this community a voice and to provide them with the tools that they need to thrive over 40. And so you are the perfect co-host to start this off and get the year going.
Oh, thank you. It was really fun. I loved it. I could do this every day. This was really fun. This is almost like, is this what talk therapy is when people mention it? Because I feel like it is. And Yes. It was free. So there was that.
Exactly. There's the bonus. So how would people find you when they want to reach out?
I am all over social media, and you can go to my website and find all those links at bonnielfrank.com.
Bonnie, thank you so much. Happy New Year to you, and have an amazing 2020. I know that you will.
Oh, thank you. Happy New Year to you. It was really, really fun.
Thank you so much for listening. If you liked this episode, please share it with a friend. You know the one. She's ready to really make some huge changes in 2020, and we're here to help her. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because then you never have to search for the show again. It will automatically appear in your favorite podcast app. Until next time, take care and keep thriving. Spring has sprung, and with the change of seasons, sometimes comes an increase in vitality. If you're feeling in the mood for a little more personal time, may I suggest Coconut. Coconut is all about providing clean and natural ingredients when you're enjoying your most intimate moments, with or without a partner. Naturally safe products developed by people who are obsessed with quality. Get 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut. That's 15% off with promo code GROWNASS at grownasswoman.guide/coconut.